Director of the Darrell Winston Show. Please have a seat.
Thank you for inviting
I know
me.
you know Sharon.
Yeah.
Oh,
of course.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, right. And
been a couple years.
anything you'd like to add in any way to what we're hearing here from Sharon? She's really giving us some detail. Now, when you were joking, were you not, when I said about swinging from the chandeliers? You say Nelson, excuse me.
Gene Raymond.
Gene Raymond, Jeanette's
Gene
husband.
Raymond sort of was a wild man, too?
Well, let me tell
It's nice when it gets juicy, isn't it? Go ahead.
Okay. I'll tell you about Jeanette MacDonald's honeymoon.
Oh, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
was
that's what
verified
Yeah.
by May Mann.
And we have pictures of
Oh, yeah?
that it did
okay.
happen.
Okay.
Not that, but
Yeah.
Jeanette and Gene had one of the most lavish weddings in Hollywood.
Ah.
It was a huge thing, you know, and Louis B. Mayer paid for some of it, and despite what Jeanette said. And it was like a big studio production. And in Mayer's viewpoint, he was really glad to get Jeanette married to anybody but Nelson Eddy because he considered Nelson to be a troublemaker. Every time Jeanette hooked up with Nelson, she'd start talking about, oh, maybe I should retire, maybe I should have some kids, you
Yeah.
know, maybe I should have a normal life. Okay, so she marries Gene thinking Gene is very similar to Nelson, and Gene is willing to let her be the star. She can be the diva. He would take a back seat to that. Well, on the honeymoon, they took the Lurleen to Hawaii.
What's a Lurleen?
It was the ship, the cruise ship that
Oh,
would go
okay,
from L.A.
okay.
to Hawaii,
Okay.
and that's how you got there in those days. And they were double dating with Mary Pickford and Buddy Rogers, who had also
Sure.
just got married.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, by the time they got to Hawaii, all the gossip mongers of the day had like the hugest hit on their hands, and they could not print a word of it, and it had to do with what was going on with Gene Raymond and Buddy Rogers.
Really?
Yes.
A homosexual thing?
Yes.
Well, I never knew that. Did you? Because I
that's
know
not-
you know.
I read a lot about it.
Well, you did.
But you know, it's into my
You know-
business. But
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I did
No.
not. First of all, it was well known in Hollywood about Gene Raymond. He was arrested several times for those, at gay bars that were raided
Okay.
in the 30s. It was very well known within the city limits. It just wasn't known outside of the city
Okay.
limits like Rock Hudson or anything else.
Right.
My
Okay.
purpose in writing this was not to say, oh, looky what I know, and just out Gene Raymond
No.
to shock people. I felt that people had to understand that Jeanette's marriage was not what people thought it was. It was a Hollywood marriage,
Right.
they stayed together because of various circumstances, and that he was there for her and he escorted her around.
He was
just
a
like,
good man. Decent guy.
it worked out
but,
okay.
but they didn't have a romantic thing.
Exactly, because I didn't want people to think that Jeanette carrying on with Nelson on the side there was like they were cheating on their spouses, and this was something that should be upsetting to people. If they didn't understand the circumstances of the marriage and the fact that she was trapped in her marriage, Nelson was trapped in his marriage, and it was all they could do to keep their sanity
Okay.
under the
Now
circumstances.
let's see if we can sort of put that in context with other people, other Hollywood people at that time. Maybe people you've known and read about and whatever. And you, I mean, were other people carrying on like that too in Hollywood? I mentioned already about Clark Gable, Loretta Young, but were others sort of hiding things that they were doing, or was this the common thing?
Well, there
was
were-
Nelson, Eddy, and Jeanette MacDonald so different than other stars in Hollywood?
only to the point where you have the irony that there's America singing sweethearts, whose
innocence.
persona is innocence and apple pie in America.
Yeah, right.
And they're doing this. So if they had, if this affair had become public, their careers would have been ruined. I mean, this is nothing like Madonna carrying on, Mae West was labeled bad, but this would have been worse than anything that could have happened.
Well, look at what happened to Ingrid Bergman.
Yes.
That's
And
the
that
next
was
one.
in the late, that was 1949. You're
Yeah.
talking about 1936. Yes. Now, I am sure that their public would have been thrilled to know this. And in fact, there were a lot of the fans who followed them around, and they would write, okay, today I followed Nelson and I turned left on Sunset Boulevard and I turned right on La Brea, and he went to Jeanette's house and I saw her get in. He went in and got her, and I followed them to Westwood, and they got in line, went to the movies, and went to see the Bells of St. Mary's. Okay, so we have eyewitness accounts like that, but for the most part it was all kept hush whispers because people were terrified to tell the story. I don't know why. I mean, there were threats. I was told that if I ever wrote a book about Jeanette or Nelson, that Jean Raymond, her husband, who survived her, would instantly sue me. I was told nobody can write a book about her. You will just get sued. It doesn't matter what's in it. Well, I ran it through a lawyer. Actually, I was friends with Melissa Corgis, who made the Great Waltz at MGM, and she told me, look, talk to my lawyer. He knows everything, and we know all about the Jeanette Nelson story, and he knows it's true. So I hired her lawyer, and he went through everything, and he said, you will not get sued. You have your documentation, and people know this story. It's not anything that's shocking in this town. But I'll tell you, it took a lot of bravery. As silly as it seems.
Yeah, now it does.
I had book signings that were picketed. People picketing outside the bookstores with placards. I had a death threat from Jean Raymond himself. I mean, it was just amazing the kinds of things that I went through to tell the story.
Had notices put inside of her books in bookstores not to buy this book.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, we had whole crusades of people, don't buy this book, ban this book. And I'm telling you, the thing that's interesting...
It's in its second printing. Ha, ha, ha.
The thing that is amazing to me is that if you love their films, and you love particularly something like Maytime, which is a story about the two of them, they fall in love, then they break up, and she marries John Barrymore, out of duty, and she stays with him, and they meet up years later and realize they've always loved each other. I mean, if you can watch that movie and love that movie, then why would you judge them and hate them when you find out their lives were so similar to that movie in so many ways? And I think that, you saw Nelson in the few years before Jeanette died, but after she died, he aged very quickly. He looked very sad and very broken. I have a picture in the book that was taken the day that she died.
I know. I'm kind of nostalgic for those days. I like that incident. You feel like that sometimes? Where we didn't know everything, and you just saw an image that they put in front of you, even if it was a little hypocritical.
Here.
You felt good about it.
This is taken the day she died.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We'll have to pass this around later if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
This is 1965, 3 years after, 2.5 years probably after I had sat next to him. He didn't look like this.
No.
He didn't look like this.
No.
Well,
he didn't look like this.
I have one other picture I'd like to show you. When this book was originally published, my publisher didn't want to print it because Jeanette was quite ill and she didn't look too well. And he said, I don't really want to have a picture where Jeanette doesn't look good. But I felt that this picture, which is the last one I've ever found of them together, but look at how he's looking at her. The man adored her.
Yes.
All his life, he adored her. And all you have to do is see them together. And, I'm not being naive. I mean, they had their ups and downs. It was not some love story that didn't go on with horrific rifts and long spans of time when they wouldn't speak to each other. But
oh, really?
Yes.